Hi there. As you may have determined by now, I'm Steve Finkel, and I'm absolutely delighted to have the chance to talk with you on what might be the most important 5 hours you'll ever spend in this business, because we're covering what may well be the most important topic in this business, the art of recruiting. This industry has changed an awful lot, let us say, in the last 20 years in ways that goes well beyond what we can cover right here. But there are two trend lines that are irrefutable and that will continue. One trend line that we've seen over the last 20 years is from a generalist desk to a specialist desk. 20 years ago, in most operations, there really were only 3 desks. Admin, which covered everything from a secretary to chief financial officer, sales, including all types of sales, and tech, which included everything in engineering and what there was of it, data processing. Now we've got people specializing either within individual firms or as firms in very narrow areas of specialization, and there's a great deal to be said for doing so. The other trend line that we've seen is from an advertising-oriented methodology of obtaining candidates to recruiting. Let's take a few seconds and talk about exactly why that's occurred. One reason that's occurred is the demographics have changed. During, let us say, the 70s and to a great degree the 80s, the economy grew much faster than the pool of available candidates did. Thus, we turned, in many instances, a very definite shortage of candidates. Ads pulled less and less and less. That is going to continue, by the way. Through the 90s and into the next millennium, we're going to be seeing the results of the very sharply decreased birth rates of the 60s and the 70s. There simply aren't enough people out there. And when you're talking demand for talent exceeding the supply, that's a recruiter's market. That's a real recruiter's market. And the money, the profits, the commissions and the fees will go to the person or the firm who can go out and find that kind of talent, the best recruiter. The other reason we've seen that trend line is because people have seen that recruiting insulates you from bad economic conditions and allows you to maximize the good economic conditions. When times are good and clients are hiring, you must recruit to find the best possible people. When times are poor, you must recruit even more, because the truth is your clients can run ads to get your basic accountants, secretaries, programmers, engineers, salesmen. What you must do is find the narrow, specialized, difficult-to-fill positions that will never respond to an ad. And the way you do that is by recruiting. People have seen the results of this. Good, proper recruiting techniques insulates you against the difficult times and allows you to take very strong advantage of the good times that we will continue to enjoy for quite a substantial period of time. However, most people don't recruit really well. They learned by absorption. They imitated and absorbed things from their managers, who probably imitated and absorbed things from their managers who faked it in the beginning. Unless you've got a real good, sound, structured, patterned method of recruiting, even if you are an excellent recruiter right now, there's a good chance that you will be making mistakes. One mistake in this business will cost you a fee. The same mistake done over a consistent period of time will cost you a small fortune. Equally to the point, if what you're doing right now is recruiting based on your business acumen or your sales ability, that's excellent. There's nothing at all wrong with that. However, where it leads is very good production and good recruiting techniques when you're feeling good, and less than good production when you're feeling bad. You can do it when you're brilliant, but what happens when you don't feel well, when you've had difficulty at work, when you, for whatever reason, a difficulty with a personal problem, when you're down? If you are recruiting based on your business or sales acumen, you will see greatly reduced results, as opposed to a good structured pattern methodology which will carry you through almost regardless of your emotional situation. For these reasons, we're going to be talking about recruiting extensively and specifically. The material that I will be presenting is not something that I've faked, so to speak. It's not something that has been tried. It is something that works. It has been tested over a period of some 20 years of me personally working a desk. It has been tested over a period of some 15 years of me running 3 successful operations, and it has now been tested at well over 300 different search and placement firms around the world. These search and placement firms are of all types. Most of what I do now is in-house training. 50% of my business is office support or a substantial minority of office support. The remaining 50% is totally professional of all types, and of course within that other 50% a substantial portion of their business as well is professional. What we're talking about works, and I urge you to pay very close attention to it because it will work for you. Let's talk the foundation of our business, the art of recruiting. The very first part of the art of recruiting, surprisingly, is not directly recruiting. Rather, it is working on the proper search assignment. This program is going to cover essentially 3 parts. Initially, selling and selecting the search assignment. When I say search assignment, by the way, I refer to contingency search assignment, which is the business we are in, that of contingency search or perhaps retainer search, but search assignment it is. Secondly, we're going to be covering identifying the candidate. I will not go into the details of why we must cover identifying the candidate at this point. I think it's fair to say, though, if you cannot identify the candidate, you will have a very difficult problem in the sense of recruiting. And thirdly, in the third section, it will be the actual recruiting call itself. Let's take them one at a time. To me, the first part of recruiting is selecting the search assignment. For you to work on the wrong search assignment absolutely guarantees you greatly reduced recruiting percentages, and chances are, even if you do recruit the candidate brilliantly, the placement probably will not come together. The most important part of this business, so far as I personally am concerned, is working on the right search assignment. Even if we do have flaws, and I think it's fair to say most of us do, working on the right search assignment will cover a multitude of our flaws. The other side of it is if you're the most brilliant person in the world in this industry and you're working on the wrong search, the placement probably is not going to come together. The fundamentals of search starts with working on the right search assignment. Now, there are 3 terms involved in that I hope you'll understand. I hope they'll be built into the format of your business and the methodology of your business, because built into these terms tells you what to do with these searches. 1, the Class A search assignment. The Class A search assignment is one that is worth conducting a full-scale recruiting effort. You're going to go out, you're going to conduct a full-scale search, you will recruit candidates, and you will fill that search assignment. One that is worth conducting a full-scale recruiting effort. Now, understand, maybe you're not really going to recruit on it. If, of course, the candidate is in the file, obviously you're not going to recruit. You'll simply present the person in the file. But that doesn't change the worth of the assignment. It is a Class A or not a Class A based on itself standing alone, not based on what's in the file. The second terminology that I hope will become part of your normal business usage is the Class B search assignment. A Class B search assignment is one on which it is worth submitting candidates if the candidate is in the file. If the candidate's not in the file, you simply will not proceed. Look, anytime you can turn paper into money, do it. Sounds like a good deal to me. But it simply isn't worth going out and conducting a full-scale recruiting effort. And the third terminology that I think you hopefully will be using is the Class Q search assignment. You may know this under a different name, that of a source company. You don't get for these people, you take from these people. Because if you had a candidate that was all that good, why would you waste them on a Q? Send them to a B or to an A. Class A, B, and Q are to me the 3 terms, or at least the 3 thought processes that we should be following, and I hope these terms will be melded into your business, because the definitions I've explained tells you what to do with them from that point onwards. Now, there's a great deal to being successful in this business, obviously, but to a substantial degree, your success in the business will be based on your ability to separate out the A's, the B's, and the cues. Now, the cues are no problem. Anybody with 2 weeks' experience in this business will tell a cue from 10 paces off. What can be difficult is separating out the A's, which, again, are worth a full-scale recruiting effort, from the B's, which are simply worth submitting a candidate if the candidate is in the file. Let's take a look at this and see what happens if you make a mistake. Let's assume that you're working on a B, but you think it's an A. What would happen? You'd go out, you'd identify candidates, you'd recruit, you'd search, you'd send candidates in, and the likelihood of your making a placement is very, very, very low. What we're talking about, if we can think of an investment money analogy, is the likelihood and return on your investment is very, very low, and you bet a huge amount on it. Low return. The other direction, of course, is if you're working on an A and you think that it's a B. You go through the file, you send in candidates. If they're not in their file, you don't send them in because you're not going to recruit on this. Probably it doesn't come together. The likely return on investment was very, very high, and you bet 25 cents. To a great degree, your ability to be successful in this business will be based on your ability to separate out the A's from the B's. Working on the wrong search assignment is about as bright as marketing the wrong candidate. What would happen if you were marketing a poor candidate? Answer, clearly it wouldn't be a bright move. You wouldn't get much of a return on the time spent. The same thing will happen if you're working on the wrong search. Selecting the search assignment is the key from which all else flows. With that, even if you do have flaws, and most of us do, the right search assignment will cover a lot of flaws. If you're the most brilliant person in the industry and you're working on the wrong search assignment, your brilliance will not be enough. The placement probably will not come together. Now, logically, what makes the Class A search assignment? How do we tell the Class A search assignment? Let's walk through a number of different points, some of which I expect you're familiar with, some of which you'll think you are familiar with, but I will present them a little differently than what you're thinking of, and some of which you may not be familiar with. Let's take the first point of what makes a Class A search assignment. 1, was the client open and cooperative? Did he volunteer information? Or did you have to drag it out of him? Was it, what do you want the person to do? Well, he's a programmer. We want him to program the computer. What kind of a computer? Big one. What kind of a big one? An IBM. What kind of an IBM? A 370. What languages? Different ones. This is not a Class A search assignment. This is not even a B. This is probably a Q. You don't want to work on that. Was he open and cooperative, or did you have to drag information out of him? Second, I'll present this a little differently than you think I will. Chemistry. And by that, of course, I mean the chemistry between the search consultant, you, and the client itself. This is the most overestimated part of our business. Certainly, chemistry is important. We all like to deal with people that are nice people that we'd like to work with. Unfortunately, there are a lot of kind, warm, and wonderful human beings out there that are working for companies that you can't do any business with. Especially with new people, but in truth with all of us, we tend to overemphasize the importance of chemistry. Chemistry is a factor without question. It's not the only factor. It certainly isn't the most important factor. And this is a trap into which we all fall sometimes. 3, why is the position open? There is a big difference between a position that's open as a result of a promotion and one that's open as a result of a termination. And you better find this out when you get the search. Example, why is a position open? Well, we had to let someone go. Okay, that does happen occasionally. How long had that person been there before you had to let him go? 3 weeks. Okay, how about the person before that? Oh, he lasted a long time. Good, we like tenure. How long? Month and a half. You want to work on this one? I don't think you want to work on this one at all. But you sure better ask and find out about it. Otherwise, you're going to work and maybe send in candidates, and then the candidate will ask that question. And what's your chances of putting this deal together? Not real high. Find it out when you get the search assignment. Now, there is something we should mention. Beware of newly created positions. When I say newly created positions, I do not mean where they've got 6 accountants and now they're going to 7. I'm talking about where they've never had someone doing the job before. It could be fun if you were experienced and if you asked the right questions and if it were an ongoing client. Most of the time, however, newly created positions are death and destruction. When you hear newly created positions, you'd better start asking some more questions. Red flags should go up in your mind. And you should ask, when you say a newly created position, Julie, you mean you're going to take a little bit of this person's occupation, a little bit of this person's job, and meld it together to make a new position. Is that right? Yeah, that's just right. Okay, fine. How many people are currently doing the job that you want this person to do? 8. Have you mentioned to these 8 people that you're going to be taking a little bit away from their jobs and giving it to someone else? You haven't brought it to their attention yet. Is there a formal position description written up? You haven't got around to it yet. How many people are going to have to agree on the proper person to hire? All 8. You know, you can't get 8 people to agree on what time it is, let alone who to hire. If you make the mistake of working on this, let me tell you what's going to happen. You will send out a candidate, maybe a good candidate, and back will come the feedback. Boy, she was good. She was real good. But we've been talking about it, and we think that somebody with maybe a little bit more, this is what's known as moving the goalposts on you. I mean, you're charging for the goal, about to make a touchdown, and suddenly someone picks it up and puts it over there, and you're going, what the heck? It was, if you make the mistake of sending out a second candidate, you'll be charging towards the goal, and then a little more, this is what we need. They're going to move it over there. Newly created positions could, under some unusual conditions, be interesting and fun. Most of the time, they're very bad things to work on. 4th, how long has the position been open? Once again, there is a difference between a position open for a week and a position open for a month and a position open for a year. You see what happens. They can tell you all they want about how urgent it is, how critical it is, how we've got to fill this position instantly, maybe even yesterday. And you say, okay, fine. May I ask how long has the position been open? 9 months. You want to work on this one? Tell me how urgent it is. You ask the questions, and eventually you're going to get the answers. 5th, nice question, have you looked internally? Meaning within your own firm, to see if there's anyone that can fill this position. Watch what happens when you say to them, have you looked internally? Well, we're going to post it tomorrow. You are? Yeah. Okay, fine. Let me ask, has this position ever been filled internally before? Yes. How many times? The last 3 times we filled this position, it was filled internally. And you're going to post it tomorrow. Right. And you want me to go out and find you candidates? Right, we're open. Look, let me make a suggestion to you. Adia, that's who you want to call. They're terrific. This sounds like they're kind of a deal. Give them a call. This is wonderful. This is just exactly what they always work on. You call them, not us. Without this information, what are you planning on doing? You'll work, and then at the end, you'll hear the famous, well, gee, your candidate was great, Dave, really good, but see, there's a young man on our staff, and we think we're going to give him a shot at it. And you're saying, oh, my stomach hurts. You know, whose fault? Whose fault? Possibly theirs, but more possibly yours. You better ask the question. 6th, what other sources are you pursuing to fill this position? And of course, how many? Oh, we're running ads in a couple newspapers, Bruce. Okay, when you say a couple, how many? Well, a few. Well, I mean, could you attach a number? How many? 42. Anything else? Oh, we're registered with a couple of executive search firms. Okay, when you say a couple, how many? Well, a few. Well, how many? 112. You want to go out and work on this one? Is this an A? Is this a B? I mean, here's your classic Q as an example. But you better find out that information. Otherwise, look, you'll work and work. And what are you going to come up with? Absolute zip. Your odds of filling it will not be high. 7th, what are the results? And by that I mean if they've run ads, how many resumes or CVs have they received? If they are working with outside sources, how many candidates have they seen? You'd better know the answer to this. Look, I think I'm good. In fact, I know I'm good. I think I'm absolutely the best around. But I have news. I don't think I'm so good to to where if they've seen 74 resumes through a newspaper ad, suddenly my 75th candidate's going to get hired. I don't think I'm so good that if other search firms have sent them 26 candidates, I'm going to send them 27 and that person's going to get hired. My odds are very, very, very bad. And so are yours. So are yours. You get the information and then you make the proper decision. And that's a real good piece of information for you to have. Eighth, have there been any offers extended? And if turndowns, why? Now, there's nothing wrong with having turndowns before you got there. It can make the client more flexible, either in terms of his criteria or in terms of what he's willing to pay. Nothing wrong with turndowns by themselves before you got there. What's wrong is not knowing why they were turned down. One of my real nice accounts that I developed happened to be an accounting firm. It was Laventhal and Horwath. And it came out of a newspaper ad. I happened to be calling on a newspaper ad, as it happens, where they had had 3 turndowns before I ever got there. And I talked with them, and it was pretty evident exactly why they'd had turndowns. I mean, these people were accountants, for goodness sakes. They couldn't sell on a bet. They had a real good operation. It was growing. I mean, there were a lot of positives to it, really a very fine opportunity. But these guys were accountants. Well, you know, I sell pretty well, so I was able to pick up the slack, and that turned into a real fine account for me, and it all came originally out of a situation where they had 3 turndowns before I got there. There's nothing wrong with turndowns by themselves. There is a lot wrong with not figuring out why it was turned down and then taking steps based on whatever that information may be. Ninth, a nice question to ask is, are there any candidates in contention at this time? And of course, how many? And where are you in the hiring process? Watch what happens when you start asking this question. What's going to happen is, are there any candidates in contention at this time? Well, yeah, 4 of them. Okay, well, where are you in the hiring process? Well, we've interviewed them. We're bringing them back for a second interview. Okay, what's your hiring process? Well, usually we extend an offer on the second interview. And you're bringing all 4 back for a second interview. Right. And you want me to go out and find more candidates for you? Yeah, we're open. Come on, you're going to work on this one? Now, again, it's your judgment. Might that be a B? In other words, if you had a perfect candidate in your files that you might send out, yeah, you'd have to look at other factors, but conceivably you could send out a candidate. But do you want to recruit on this? Again, it's spending your time in the right places. There are a lot of definitions of time management running around, but I think if you really had to break it down, a good working definition of time management would be spending the amount of time where it's worth spending the amount of time, where your investment is going to be good. Separating out the A's, the B's, the Q's will allow you to spend the appropriate amount of time in the appropriate area. Next is something that is a little bit more free-flowing. It's not a question. It is, what is the ratio of fee to the difficulty in filling? What is the likely fee going to be? And then how tough is it going to be to go out and fill that opportunity? Perhaps the easiest way to put it is as follows. There is something called a high fee syndrome that affects a lot of us in this industry. When you get your large fee, whatever you perceive as a large fee, it doesn't matter what it was. My highest personal fee that I've booked is $31,000, and I was absolutely delighted to get it. I will say my lowest personal fee that I've booked is $600, and I was absolutely delighted to get it too. However, when you start booking what you perceive are high fees, there will be a real strong tendency to stay with those high fees and to overlook opportunities that are easily filled where the fee is less than what you're used to. Example, once upon a time I was working accounting. Just simply one of the areas I've specialized in. And my average fee at the time, I'd say, was probably $10,000. And I'm working along, and all of a sudden one of my clients said to me, "Steve, let me ask you something. You guys ever find bookkeepers?" Well, the truth was no. I'd never filled a bookkeeping position in my life and never particularly wanted to. But it was a client, and I came back and said, "Well, why? Have you been trouble finding bookkeepers?" "We can't find bookkeepers on a bet." Now, had it been a non-client, I would have said, "Sorry, we don't work bookkeepers, goodbye." But it was a client. You like to think you can do things for clients sometime. And I said, "Yeah, we do work on bookkeepers sometimes. Let's get some information." And I went out and I took a thorough search. I did not shortcut the search assignment. But in that market at that time, nobody ever heard of recruiting in the bookkeeping field. I identified 5 candidates in a morning. I made 5 recruiting calls. I recruited 5 candidates. I was 5 for 5 in a morning. 3 of them said they were qualified. Hey, I didn't know. I never worked the field. But they said they were qualified. I called up the client. I presented the candidates. He said, wonderful, when can we see them? I sent them out. Offer extended, offer accepted. And when was the last time I ever had a first interview hire working accountants, and the fee came wandering in? It was about a $5,000 fee. So I thought, nice little $5,000 fee. And I was wandering along, and probably 6, 7 months later, another client said to me, Steve, let me ask you something. You guys ever work bookkeepers? Now, I'm a little slow sometimes, but not all the time. And I said, yeah, sometimes we do. You've been having trouble finding bookkeepers? We can't find them at all. So I said, let's get some information. And I took a complete search assignment. Again, you do not shortcut the search assignment form. I went out, and again, in an afternoon, I'd identified 5 candidates. I had recruited 5 candidates. I was 5 for 5. 3 claimed they were qualified. I sent them out. Offer extended, offer accepted, first interview hire, about a $4,500 fee came wandering in. Interesting. And of course, forever after, as I'm working along, I'm saying to my accounting clients, by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but we work heavily in bookkeepers. I hadn't brought that to your attention. Well, one of our strong points. And I really didn't particularly want to specialize in bookkeepers, but these were like popcorn. Every single year for 4 or 5 years, I'm bopping in anywhere between 20 and 30 bookkeeping positions a year at an average fee of anywhere at that time from $4,000 to $5,000. And never did it take me more than an afternoon or a morning, half a day, to identify candidates. Now, I booked a lot of business, but I didn't average any $8,000 a day. The reason I mention this is, let's make it real simple. Would you rather work for 2 weeks on a $10,000 fee or 2 days for a $5,000 fee? Now, I'm talking, I don't suggest we all go out and look for bookkeepers, but many times there will be little narrow niches in your marketplace, in your area of specialization, that can work out very, very well, where you can make additional money out of all proportion to the time that you spent. Example, maybe it is accountants and bookkeepers. Maybe it is, as an example, if you work technical sales, perhaps the field service reps, the people that fix the machine. If you work data processing, perhaps operators. Now, you'll simply have to look at your own marketplace, but here's what you want. 1, notice it must fit well with your main area of specialization. You'll notice I wasn't looking for field service reps while working in accounting. 2 different. I worked bookkeepers. Whenever I wanted a good accountant, I simply called up one of my bookkeepers and said, who's a good accountant? The normal answer was there aren't any. But when I rephrased it and said, who's the least terrible accountant you know, then I started getting some answers, of course. The other thing that you're looking for, of course, is demand must greatly exceed the supply. There was a shortage of bookkeepers in that particular market. It may well be there's a little narrow niche market within your area of specialization that you can work very well. The other syndrome that people hit in this business, surprisingly, is the low fee syndrome. They will work very long to develop a marketplace. Later on, they develop either the contacts or the business acumen to work at a higher level. However, they don't work at that higher level because so much of their time is taken up working on the low-fee positions. They're afraid to turn loose of what they've got, thus they never get into the high-fee areas. I simply point out to you that as you progress in this industry, ask yourself, am I a victim of the high-fee syndrome, or am I a victim of the low-fee syndrome? And along with that, might there be a little niche area that can fit very well with my main area of specialization? Now, you can't say how tough is it to find these people, but I do suggest that part of the analysis is what's the likely ratio of the fee to the difficulty in filling. It's not so much what's the biggest fee, it's how much effort do you put into to find that fee. That's where you spend your time. Next, I suggest that a good eliminator is what does the client tell you about the degree of urgency. This is an eliminator only. Only. A negative result, a negative answer is to be believed. A positive answer is to be ignored. If he tells you it's urgent, it's important, we have to fill it yesterday, pay no attention to that, none. Look at other factors. If he tells you there's no hurry, believe him. There's no hurry. And you don't want to go to work on this one, because you'll find out he was telling you the truth. If someone tells you they're wonderful, terrific, stupendous, and awe-inspiring, maybe true, maybe not. But if they tell you they're not very good, you believe them. They're telling you the truth. Twelfth, are you dealing with the hiring authority? I will not say that there are no good personnel people around. There are thousands of no good personnel people around. The truth is they got into that business because they didn't have the personality to become morticians. I think, well, I call them as I see them. I understand there are some people out there in the audience and right here that may have got into this business from a background in personnel. I hold those people in high regard. As an American, I'm a firm believer in social climbing. And obviously they've achieved that. I do suggest to you that when you're dealing with personnel, it is a negative. It may yet be a Class A search assignment, but it is clearly a negative and must be compensated with additional positives to counter that negative. Next, I suggest that there is an interesting eliminator that has a number of different features to it. You've heard it before, I expect, quite possibly from your manager, but nobody exactly says how to achieve it. Will the client sell the benefits of the opportunity? And of course, when I say benefits, I'm not talking retirement plan. I'm speaking of Xerox professional selling skills feature the benefits. Will he do a good selling job? Or does he open up the interview with the famous, "Why do you want to join our firm?" Always a wonderful way to open up an interview, especially with a recruited candidate. All right, and that's a good thing to find out. But the question is, how do you find out? How do you get him to do it? And if he won't do it, what the heck will you do? I suggest really the first step is not talking about will you sell the candidate. The first step is selling this person on why he has to do things differently with your candidate than he has been doing in the past. If you don't do that, talk about why he has to sell, you can straightforwardly say, well, you do a good selling job all you want. And he might say, well, yes, I will. But what he's thinking is, look, I've been in this business for 27 years, and maybe I don't do the world's best selling job, but people do go to work for me, so how bad could I be? Your first step is selling that potential client on you, and also why your candidate is going to be different. How do you do that? How do you do that? Let me walk you through a piece of script that I think you'll find will be very effective on finding out will he sell, but more than that, persuading him why he should do business with you. It's called Difference Between Recruit and Unemployed. Here's how it goes. You know, Bruce, it's been our experience that ads, optional insertion, or agencies, comma, which advertise, close parenthesis, I present myself as a search firm, and I hope you do too, tend to yield the best of the unemployed, the best of the unhappy, and the best of the unqualified. The real truth, Sue, I mean, the honest truth is the person you'd love to have on board. I mean the winner, the accomplisher, the high achiever. Marry the person you'd love to have with you. This kind of person isn't reading newspaper ads. Optional insertion. They're not registering with employment agencies. Close optional insertion. But they're available. They are, Jeannie, if they're approached by a professional recruiter. And then a check back close. Has that been your experience? Does that make sense to you? Everybody follow me on this. Look, what are you going to say? Now, you can say, as to YS, you can say we specialize in the field. Wonderful thing. You should. You can certainly say we've been in business a long time. Good, you should. You can say we screen tightly. Of course you should. We can say we would never waste your time with unqualified candidates. Wonderful. I mean, we check references. Great. Any other firm can say that too, and that's the truth. How about if it's been our experience that ads, optional, or agencies which advertise, close option, tend to yield the best of the unemployed, the best of the unhappy, the best of the unqualified. The real truth, Dave, is that the person you'd love to have on board, I mean the winner, the accomplisher, the high achiever, this kind of person isn't reading newspaper ads, Pam. They're not registering with employment agencies. But they're available if they're approached in the proper manner by a professional recruiter. Does that make sense to you, Mary? See what he's got to say. If he says, wonderful, that's great. If he says, well, no, I don't quite follow you on that. Look, the answer to an objection is a rebuttal. That's God's will. Acknowledge, rebut, and reclose. It may be necessary to ask another question to determine which rebuttal to use, so that you might want to build in. But the answer to an objection, if you're clear on what the objection is a rebuttal. And the rebuttal may take the form of questions. Example, let's talk the Socratic methodology. Now, the Socratic methodology is a Socratic method of selling, was named after Socrates, obviously, whom Plato informs us once pulled the Pythagorean theorem out of a Greek slave boy by asking questions. Now, Socrates thought that it proved reincarnation, that the boy had been a mathematician in a previous life. I rather think it proved that Socrates was very quick on his feet or had prepared in advance, they're equally as good, was knowledgeable about his subject, and very adept at asking questions. From that story, we get the Socratic method of selling. Watch the Socratic method of selling applied to our, well, gee, no, I don't quite follow you. I don't think that is true, Bruce. Well, here, let me put it a little differently. Ken, why would a person be reading newspaper ads? I mean, practically speaking, I don't mean occasionally. We all perhaps look at them occasionally, but on an ongoing basis, why would someone be reading newspaper ads every single solitary weekend or maybe every day? How come? Answer? Well, I guess you're probably not too happy where he is. Unhappy people? Yeah. Why else? Why else, Jeannie, would someone be reading newspaper ads? I mean, putting that aside, why else? I wasn't employed. I mean, practically speaking, if he doesn't have a job, he'd be reading newspaper ads. Unemployed people. Yeah. Okay, and you got to help him along. And I think, as we both know, reasonably speaking, Mary, unqualified people read newspaper ads. We see that all the time. Yeah, we sure do. Okay, look, so what have you got? You've got unhappy, unemployed, unqualified. You can select brilliantly, Bernie, and I have no doubt that you do, if you get your people from an employment agency as opposed to a search firm or recruiting firm. They can select beautifully, and perhaps they do. And you will get the absolute prime, number one, best of the unemployed, best of the unqualified, best of the unhappy. Bruce, is that kind of person the person you want to build a business on? Does that make sense to you, Kim? Do you follow me on this? Everybody follow me on this? That goes pretty well. That goes real well. And if it doesn't go quite well enough, let me tell you what will. If he's still saying, well, no, I don't think that's true at all, the your firm rebuttal will make it clear to this person, very clear. Here's how it goes. Let me ask you something, Bob. How many people are there in your firm altogether? 527. Okay, fine. Would it be fair to say that right now, some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them are reading ads on an ongoing basis, Tom? Are registering with employment agencies? Some of them? What's he going to say? Nope, none whatsoever? Well, I guess some of them are. Fine, yeah, sure, fine. Let me ask you something, Dave. On the average, do you think they would represent the best 10% of your firm or the worst 10%? Pause. What do you think he's going to say? If he says the best, my advice is recruit him. Won't be tough. Fine, I assume you're one of the best 10%, Sue? You're darn right I am. Good, let's get some information. Now, you're with... But in truth, he's not going to say that. And he won't say the worst. What he'll say is, I see your point. That means you're right, I'm wrong, but I'm not going to admit it. Well, that's okay. The point is, he does see your point. Only when you've explained and understood that he understands the difference between best of the unemployed, best of the unhappy, best of the unqualified, versus the winner, accomplisher, high achiever, only then can you reasonably find out, will he do a good selling job? If you don't get that across, you can ask about selling all you want, and what he'll think is, well, the last guy I hired, I didn't have to sell him, so why do I have to sell someone now? And from his standpoint, he's right. But if the last guy he hired came from a newspaper ad or from an employment agency which ran ads for their people, good golly, you don't have to sell these people, you just have to fight them off. A recruited candidate is a whole different ballgame. You must get this through. Otherwise, talking about selling job won't make any sense. Bruce, it's been our experience that ads, or for that matter agencies which advertise for their candidates, tend to yield the best of the unemployed, the best of the unhappy, and the best of the unqualified.
What's my option?
Well, we're a pretty good option for starters. The truth is the kind of person you'd love to have on board. I mean the winner, the accomplisher, the high achiever. This kind of person isn't reading newspaper ads and they're not registering with employment agencies. But they're available, they are, if they're approached in the proper manner by a professional search consultant.
I'm not sure I see your point.
Well, let me give you a better example, perhaps. How many people are there in your firm altogether?
About 600.
All right. Would it be fair to say that right now, some of them, I'm not saying all, but some of them are reading ads in newspapers on a routine basis, are registering with employment agencies? Some of them?
Possibly.
On the average, do you think they would represent the best 10% of your firm or the worst 10%?
I see your point.
Sure. And what makes you think it's different for any other firm? I believe you've been hiring the best of what you've been seeing. I've got no question about that. The only question I'd have is, what have you been seeing?
I see your point.
What we do is go out and track down the really narrow, specialized, difficult to find people, the best, the ones you'd never see through a newspaper ad. That's where the real talent lies, and that's what we do. I will say, though, that you do have to treat the recruited candidate a little bit differently than you would treat the unemployed or unhappy person you got from a newspaper ad or an employment agency. I guess the difference is, if after talking with this person, you want it to be your choice to proceed rather than his, and that's how you do it. Then where you slide to is to the grass is greener script. The grass is greener script will identify what kind of a selling job this person does. As follows. Does that make sense to you? Yes, I guess that does make sense. You've wrapped up the your firm rebuttal. Fine. Keep in mind, Bernie, that you can't treat a recruited candidate the way you treat the unhappy or unemployed person you get from a newspaper ad. Optional insertion, or possibly from an employment agency that advertises heavily. Close option. He's not desperate. He's not unemployed. He's probably doing pretty well where he is. I guess the difference is, Bruce, if after talking to him, you want it to be your choice to proceed rather than hers, you've got to tell her why she should join your firm. You've got to tell her where the grass is greener on your side of the street. Kim, assuming that we find that kind of a highly qualified person, are you prepared to do that kind of a selling job? Question mark, pause. See what they've got to say. Some people will say, hey, look, don't worry about it. You find me the right candidate, Steve, I'll do the selling job. Put your mind at ease there. That's terrific. That's what you want to hear. Other people will say, look, person wants to join our firm, that's fine, but I'm not going to try to talk her into it. Okay. That kind of an answer is bad to hear. I know it is, but it's darn good to know. Bad to hear, but good to know. In business, it is always better to know than not to know. Always. There are no exceptions. Now, that's not true in your personal life. Sometimes you're better off not knowing. Nevertheless, in business, you've got to know, because knowing you can make decisions. Without knowing, what the heck are you going to do? And then later on, now I'm going to suggest later on, this is not in the next step, but after asking the same good questions that I seriously hope you ask right now about the client, tell me about the growth of the firm, what kind of products do you manufacture, How have your sales been going? Standard good questions about the client that I hope you ask anyway. Try adding one more question, and it's as follows. Mary, let me ask you something. If I were the candidate, you interviewed me, you liked me, you wanted to hire me, and now you are going to tell me why I should go to work for your firm. Tell me, Jeannie, what would you say to me? That's a real good question. And phrased that way is a real good question. It serves two purposes. One, first, look at where it comes. It comes after asking a bunch of closed-end questions about the client. Tell me about your growth, what kind of volume you're having, what did you do last year, standard type stuff. On one level, it is an open-ended question to allow him to hold forth, to pontificate, to expand about positives to his firm that you haven't asked about. Because the truth is, you can't ask everything in closed-end questions. If you did, you'd be on the phone all day. Example, well, we tripled our research and development budget last year, and we're going to triple it again next year. And we think that's going to result in a lot of new products, therefore greatly increased sales for our organization. Is that a positive? Heck yes. You're going to say to every firm, tell me about your R&D budget? Maybe. Maybe not. What if he said, well, we tripled our advertising budget last year, and we'll triple it again next year, and we think that's going to result in some radically increased sales. We're on a growth mode. That a positive? Well, darn right it's a positive. You're going to say to every firm, tell me about your ad budget? And even if you did, there's almost always a very definite positive or two or three that you could never pull out in closed-end questions. That kind of a question will get the answer. On a different level, look at what you're saying. If I were the candidate, Mary, and you interviewed me, you liked me, you wanted to hire me, and now you are going to tell me why I should go to work for your firm, tell me, what would you say to me? What are you saying? On a different level, you're saying, hey, sell me, Jack. Sell me. You'll find out what kind of a selling job this person does. Some people, not many, but some, will come across with a good, sound, comprehensive sales presentation that'll knock your socks off. Some. Others will say, well, free coffee. Great. It's a good coffee? Oh, yeah, it's real good coffee. Oh, that's terrific. What else? Free parking. Okefenokee, Florida, free parking? Yeah, just got to be careful where you park. Wonderful. What else? Well, we're nice people here. Come on. That's not kind of a sales job, but better to know than not to know. Now, you'll note what that question is not. It's not, why would a person want to come to work for your firm? Why would a person want to come to work for your firm is better than nothing, but that's about all you can say for it. It's way too broad. It's way too general. It lends itself to an answer of the growth, the opportunity, the potential. That's no good. You want specifics, and you want to find out what kind of a good sales job or bad sales job this person is doing. Only by going through difference between recruit and unemployed, with rebuttals if necessary, and then to Grass's greener script and note later on, after asking questions about the client specifically, if I were the candidate, and so forth, what would you say to me? Can you find out what kind of a selling job this person really does? Now, you've had this situation before. We are not talking about something minor. If you've ever had a situation where you've sent out a candidate to a good opportunity, and he or she has come back after the interview, it's about the same as what I'm doing now. No better than where I am at present. Not all that neat. And you know that's not true. You've had those situations before. Now, you have figured it out. After you send out a candidate to a good opportunity and he comes back not interested, not all that neat. After you send out another candidate, and 3 good candidates go down, you can probably figure out this person doesn't do much of a selling job. And you can figure it out that way. How much have you paid for that knowledge? 3 candidates may be good candidates that went down. Wouldn't it be better if you could get the knowledge without paying the price? This will accomplish that purpose. Now, what do you do under the circumstances of good opportunity? bad selling job. What are you going to do? You have followed up. You've followed up on the difference between recruit and unemployed, grass is greener script. Later on, if I were the candidate, and you've come to the conclusion this person does a poor selling job, but it is a good opportunity. You've had this situation occur, and you better know how to handle it. Now, you understand it's a good opportunity. Bad opportunity, bad selling job, this is called a class Q. But we're not talking that. Good opportunity, bad selling job. Let's talk traditional industry knowledge and then non-traditional industry knowledge. Traditional response is as follows. Quote, coach the client. In the late 70s, a gentleman named Phil Ross, R-O-S-S, came out with an audio cassette series called The 25 Steps to the Placement Process. Later on, of course, the material was stolen by speakers who couldn't invent their own material. One of Mr. Ross's next steps was coach the client. And coach the client works something like this. Bob, what about the fact that your firm has grown from $100,000 in revenues to $10 billion in revenues in the last 2 years? Do you think you might possibly mention that to the candidate? He'll say, oh, yeah, we mentioned that. We will. Sure he will. How about the fact that your firm has shown increased revenues for every quarter for the last 475 straight quarters with no exceptions? Do you think you might bring that to his attention? Oh, yeah. We'll mention that. We sure will. Sure he will. Come on, let's be reasonable. If this guy is an accountant, a programmer, an engineer, goodness knows, in personnel, I mean, how do you make him normal in one easy lesson? I mean, let's be reasonable about this. How do you make him into a salesman? No chance. Now, I know there's a school of thought that says you can't change personalities. That's not true. You can change personalities in this manner. 1, extensive psychotherapy. 2, a prefrontal lobotomy. Very common amongst personnel people, as I'm sure you've noticed. And 3, drugs. I mean, that'll work, it will. But I think they all take more than 5 minutes on the telephone. Therefore, what do you do under the circumstances of good opportunity, bad selling job? Mr. Ross's 25 steps of the placement process, quote, coach the client, is effective if he can sell or if he will sell. But what if he can't or won't? Good opportunity, bad selling job. Let me give you a piece of script called 3 types of companies. With the candidate, not the client, the candidate, before he or she goes out on the interview, try this. You know, Bob, in our experience, typically there are 3 types of companies. First type of firm, oversells. And expand on this. You want hype, hustle, and blue suede shoe. They're going to put on their dancing shoes and dazzle you with their feet work. Second type of firm, Mary, calls things pretty much the way things really are. And the third type of firm, Sue, typically the best type, undersells. They don't sell because they don't have to. They let their record speak for itself. Upchuck Engineering is that type of firm. So you want high hustle and blue suede shoe, you're not going to get it. They'll let their record speak for itself. Back comes the comment from the candidate. Fine, because that's the kind of guy I am. Resist the temptation to reply, yes, I know. Don't say that. I tried that once. It didn't work too well. Some people are sensitive. Just reinforce. Okay, fine, so just keep it in mind. They're not going to give you any blue sky or hype and hustle. They're just going to let their record speak for itself. Okay, fine, I understand. Now, let's take a look at this. There's the client. There's the candidate. Let's see what happens if you only coach. And you have coached. I've mentioned this. I build this up. Here's an area he'll be real interested in. Response from the client, okay, I'll do that. I sure will. Sure you will. Now the end result. He's going to sell. Guess you want to know about our company. Here's an annual report. Might take a look at that little product information. Might look at that. You get a chance. That's about it. Because it really is pretty hard to coach a person out of his or her own personality, much as he'd love to do so. Now, What's the candidate think? Typically, he or she thinks one of three things. One, boy, this guy's not interested in me at all. He's not taking any time to explain anything to me about the company. Clearly, he doesn't want to waste any more time on me. But do I care? Nah, because I don't like him much either. A possible thought process. Second possible thought process, son of a gun. If this guy's not excited and enthusiastic about his company, how does he want me to be excited about it? Heck with these people. Or the third possible thought process might be, this guy's not telling me anything good about his company, but I know why that is. He's kind of limited in terms of material. Not a lot good he can say. Clearly not much of a company. Now, will it be that clear-cut? No, of course not. All right, it won't be that clear-cut. These three thought processes will be blended together. Maybe there's a fourth possibility I've left out. But the perception on the part of a candidate to a poor selling job from a client is always, always, always a negative. And maybe enough of a negative to blow the placement. If you haven't set it up with three types of company script, what if you have? Now what's the thought process? Now the thought process is, Ken was right. This guy figures if I'm supposed to be an engineer, a programmer, an accountant, and I'm not intelligent enough to read and understand this annual report or the product information, I'm probably not intelligent enough to hire. I better take a look at this thing. Now, is that as good as a strong selling job from a client? No, of course it isn't. I know that. You're always better off with a strong selling job from a client. But sometimes you're not going to get a good selling job, and that's all there is to it. Under those circumstances, you're in a need for damage control. Three types of company script is great damage control information. And once again, you've had this happen. A bad selling job will greatly reduce your chances. Your task is to tell him why he should sell, difference between recruit and unemployed, find out will he do a good selling job, grass is greener later on if I were the candidate, and if in the final analysis he won't, three types of company script is effective damage control. Everybody, follow me on this. Additional, in selecting the search assignment, what kind of an offer will they extend? Will they extend a fair offer? I won't say that to be a Class A search assignment, there must be a good increase built in. There are circumstances where the opportunity, the potential, the firm is so exceptional, it could be a lateral move, no increase, and still be a Class A. But I think we'll all agree that most of the time, if it is to be a Class A, there better be an increase built in. Most of the time. Everybody agree with that? Well, now you can once again find this out in one of two ways. You can send out candidate and candidate and candidate and candidate and candidate and then get your offer. A quick 1.2% increase. Congratulations. And get a turn down. And then send out candidate and candidate and candidate and candidate and then get an offer. A quick 1.4% increase. Wonderful, you're making progress. I mean, another 47 candidates and you might be to acceptable offer. All right, but look at what you've paid to find that information out, because you can figure it's a pretty cheap company after a couple of bad offers in a row. But what's the price? Wouldn't it be nicer if you could find out what the offer is going to be when you got the search assignment? Get the information without paying the price? That's an ideal solution, isn't it? You can do that. You can with the dollar increase script.